landlords, landlords and property owners in strata getting slammed with new fire compliance over the last couple of years. We've experienced it as real estate agents when we're selling properties. We're going to talk about how people are dealing with things with.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
That was brilliant.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. I feel like an Olympian doing breakdancing. A female Olympian
Yeah.
doing breakdancing this morning. That's how I feel.
But good weekend.
Good weekend. Did you hear about our Australian Olympian doing breakdancing?
I've seen it go viral, but I haven't heard the latest news if there is more.
All I can say is every sportsman is entitled to have a bad run. You know,
That's
if
all
she
right.
got zero, if you're trying to find it, guys and girls, you can see a little bit on socials. But if you want to see the whole thing, you've got to go to the Nine Now app, and you got to cycle back to the Olympics, and you got to cycle back to the breakdancing female. And about three quarters through the 2 hours of breakdancing, you'll see her. She goes through three sessions, and very interesting, very interesting. But hats off for giving it a go. A lot of exercise, a lot of hard work, and
Yeah.
respect to her.
Yeah, respect to be in the Olympics, a lot of work. But on to the topic of fire. This is what would have me breakdancing, nervous in my boots, getting hit
Yes.
with some of these fire safety upgrades. God, they're costly.
Yeah, and people don't really understand what the hell is going on. So in houses, it's very easy to comply. Hell, you just put up some sensors and she'll be right, mate. Put them in the right locations. But with strata properties, they require them to be hardwired. They require compartmentalization. So certain doors have to be 2 hours, 4 hours, or whatever burn proof. The surrounds of the doors can't be timber; they've got to be steel. Back to base,
Yep.
hardwired is makes it difficult for people. But we're going to just cover that today with people because it's sort of getting a bit scary for people in DY, the cost and how it's actually addressed.
Yeah, yeah, and what you've mentioned is just a few, probably out of a long list. Um, Start to finish, these processes can take, months and months. And buildings have to sort of really prepare themselves for it because to raise this sort of cash can only be done through either quarterly sort of savings where they put the levies up or a big sort of cash injection, which might be like a special levy or a strata loan.
Yeah, and I guess look how it went is probably 10 years ago. There was it came through government that people wanted to further protect buildings, particularly when smoke starts. People have got the opportunity to run. So obviously you got those noise. You've also got the back to base, which will deploy the fire department when there's smoke in your property. So
Yeah,
it was a big thing to sledgehammer through, a huge cost to the economy, a huge cost to everyone. And what actually happened is it actually forced everyone a lot of unit blocks. So in DY we probably got 1,000 unit blocks, 800 unit blocks, and most of them, if not all of them, did not comply with these new codes that came through. So the next question was, okay, what do we have to do to comply, and
yep,
when do we have to comply? And council made a sort of concerted effort to stagger it. So they said, okay, we're going to do this over, say, a 5-year period.
yes.
So now we're sort of buried into halfway, 2/3 through all unit blocks in DY, and people are like, "What are you talking about? We're not compliant." It's always been like this.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's interesting to watch buyers go through that sort of buying journey. We're seeing it from all sort of aspects. The landlords, we're seeing it from the property owners, seeing it from tenants, and of course then buyers. And it's certainly on people's shopping list.
And look, one of those things where I guess we're sort of getting pretty good at it as real estate agents, because we're having to explain it to purchasers where they have these non-compliance or these works coming up, and we're explaining it to landlords as well. All in all, it's costing some unit blocks, some apartment owners 15 grand. It's costing some of them 25 grand, depending on the level of compliance needed on their particular building. But there's a couple of key things they want. They want to have so drenches are the things that actually sit outside the windows. Those little, and sometimes some of the blocks have the drenches internally. Not really a requirement. Sensors back to base.
What does that mean?
So, well, Wi-Fi, no good. It has to be wired, and when we say back to base, it's a copper cable that actually rings a telephone line and rings the fire department. So nothing
Yep.
over 4G or wireless. So it makes it more expensive because you're running a bucket load of cables through the building. Still, that's probably a low cost. They want the most extreme parts of the apartment. They want a high flow water. Those things,
Extinguisher.
hydrant.
Hydrant.
So they have to. So the hose from that high flow hydrant has to get to the extreme points of every apartment. So you are finding that these are installed in areas. So when you pull out the hose and you're at the end of the hose, it actually gets to the last apartment, the longest distance apartment. So those high flow hoses then require a high flow pipe from the street. So they're not a regular sort of water pipe. They need a high flow pipe, so that sort of runs from the street. And then the bigger buildings need to be able to pump it to keep that flow going. So that's when it starts getting expensive for fire. And then when it starts also getting expensive is they require, you can't go over a certain amount of meters squared internally, and they because what they do is, I don't know if you know what they did with the Titanic, but they chambered up the bow of the Titanic. So at any point, if water got in, it would be contained. That's that same principle with fire. So they chamber up the unit blocks to say, okay, well, you can't have greater than, I don't know, 100 an apartment. For example, as a chamber, and then if the fire starts in that apartment, we don't want it to spread to the next apartment. So that in that case, we want the door to have a certain burn rate, and then on the spine of the door, it says when the door was installed and and the qualification of the door, like if it does have a 2-hour, 3-hour, 4-hour burn rate, and then that often you'll notice in these older buildings, they're timber frame doors, so door jams. So it's no use having a door that's a 2-hour fire rate, and then your door jams burns. So then they have to replace often in these buildings all of the doors for the units, the hydrant system. When it goes back to base, it goes back to a board, an electrical board. So when the fire department turns up, they can actually go straight to the electrical board and they can identify where the risk is straight away.
Fire safety panel. There you go. Yeah. But look, you can't put sort of a price on safety, right? And I think it's good that there is some kind of constant upgrade, constant progress when it comes to this stuff. I think people's frustration sometimes comes when they see the trades marking up huge margins on work because it's got to be done. And let's face it, who's got 3 or 4 different fire safety companies that in their back pocket they can quote? They're relying heavily on the strata to do that due diligence for them, make sure they're getting themselves a good price.
Yep. Then it's got to be checked. So some buildings are quarterly, biannually. So it's got to be checked. Someone's got to come through, and all the equipment's got to be checked, make sure it's operational, working, tested. You know what? We're probably one of the most compliant in the world when it comes to fire safety, and good on us. Like I think you can sleep at night, knowing that because it's not only you, it's other people in the building that may be silly, and something or may have an accident, and then you protect it. I can't hear you, Billy Bob. I'll do a refresh.
But yeah, guys, if you can you hear me
You're
now?
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I say if you're a buyer, have a look for something that's where it's already done, or they've started that work. You'll you'll thank
Big
yourself.
time.
Yeah.
Look, the biggest tip out of what we've spoken about today is awareness about it. So when you're looking to buy, just see if it's up to date on all the codes of the building, and you could be saving yourself a lot of money. Because I think a third to a half of DY is not done, and it's coming up, and it will cost you unexpectedly.
Yep. There you go. Stay safe.
Fire. And good luck to our Australian. Good luck to our Australian breakdancer.
Have a great day, Mark.
See you guys. Love you. Bye bye.